Life has a way of moving quickly. One day, everything is in routine. And next, a sudden healthy event can leave a family standing in a hospital hallway, forced to make a life-altering decision they never expected.
So welcome back to Gracefully Aging by Design. And I'm joined by Frank, and we are here today to talk about your health, documented and planning for the unexpected. We've spent years addressing the many challenges with both our senior clients and families. And the hardest moments, I think, are when something happens suddenly and then they're also unable to speak for themselves. And so returning to guide us here today is Connie Jorsvik.
Hello.
Hi. So she's the founder of Patient Pathways, and she is also very specialized in advanced care planning. And she has created many guides dedicated to keeping people, or to helping people actually document the healthcare wishes. So welcome, Connie.
Thank you. It's nice to be here again.
Thank you. Connie, so our first question is that most people listening today are thankful that they're in good health. They are relatively healthy and enjoying their life. But because of that, planning seems to, for a medical crisis seems so far away. And they can just wait until someday.
Someday can arrive all of a sudden without warning, right? And so they can be fine going along, but then something unexpected happens. They get a diagnosis that's quite serious and not quite sure where to start. So what would be, if that was the scenario, what would be the essential things that people need to know as they're trying to navigate through our healthcare system?
I think the number one thing that people need to know is that it could happen to them.
Yeah.
And it's not only just the young people who think that it won't happen to them. I've seen people in their 90s who still think that they are invincible, or have delegated, subconsciously or consciously, this will not be my problem. This will be my family's problem.
Right.
If I get suddenly ill. I go to a lot of emergency rooms and I look around, and not one of those people, of the hundreds of people who are in an emergency room, are planning on being there that morning.
Yeah.
And so it can happen that fast. So what are some of the things, if our listeners do nothing else today, is say, walk away from this thinking about what they want, thinking about what their values and beliefs are, and talking to their loved ones, no matter how vaguely, it's important that they say something. I would never want to get like that, pointing to an uncle or an aunt or somebody who's frail, or somebody who's in an intensive care unit. I would never want to get like that. It's enough for the family to be able to then say to the healthcare teams, Mom would never want to have been like this. And then there's documentation that we can put in place.
Right. Okay. So just going to give some of the examples here. We talked about last time too, keep knowing what medication you're taking, or even what the diagnosis is, right?
Yes.
And understanding that. Is that also another good place to start?
A lot of us don't think about our daily, what's going on in our daily lives at all. And the more, as we get older, another medication has been added.
Right. Yeah.
And maybe your doctor has said, oh, let's keep an eye on your blood pressure, which probably indicates that your blood pressure is a little high.
Right.
Or those blood sugars are creeping up. It's getting a little bit more specific and saying, what does this mean? And it's really important to have some kind of health history written down. Right. Because we're the only ones who hold it. And if it's in a filing cabinet someplace and we're in an emergency, what are we going to do about that?
Right.
So where are you in your healthcare journey? Do you need to document that? We go to a new physiotherapist or a new specialist, and they put down pieces of paper in front of us and say, in this next 15 minutes, tell me about your life.
Right.
And we often forget about the new medication that was started last week or last month. So it's important that we document it and understand our health.
So, Connie, I do have something off script, so
Okay.
a little bit surprised. So, I think it's more related that our listener more is that if you have any stories to share compared to the emergency which is planned, and when the story when they are not planned, so they can have a more related. Oh, I don't want that kind of example to happen to me. Do you have any examples of stories like we can share? You can share.
I have a lot of stories in that people, because they're just not thinking about it, and even when they've been diagnosed with a disease, it's still something distant. It's still something far away. The worst I've seen is when I get called in, sometimes by a lawyer's office, because a loved one has been, loved ones have been told that their loved one is on life support and they're not going to survive, and the family is fighting it. So I'm called in as a mediator. And in most of these cases, the loved one has said nothing. And so the doctor is just trying to pry it out of them. And one of the things that I talk about all the time is, except for a very few exceptions, all of us would believe in quality of life over quantity.
Of course,
It's
yes.
a really basic value. But when we get down to the nub of things, when I'm starting to do advanced care planning with people, they go, well, maybe I'd want dialysis. Maybe I'd want my heart to be restarted, without thinking about the quality of life afterwards.
Right.
And so it's, and that's really tough, but then families want quantity. And so if we don't say to them, I would never want to be like this, like grandpa in an old folks' home staring at walls, if we don't say that, our family is going to keep on pushing, keep on giving antibiotics, maybe force feeding, those kinds of things, because they want one more day with us, one more minute, one more hug, one more dinner, those kinds of things. So they're looking for quantity. So it's really important that we have those conversations.
Yeah. And especially when they are facing that state, it's an emotional decision.
Extremely.
Yeah. And rather than obeying like what the loved one really wants.
Right.
And I think at the end of the day, like you said, maybe they want quantity, but they can also go back to what would mom have wanted, what would dad would have wanted, and can we fulfill their wishes? So I think that's really important.
Yeah.
So I think we've come now to actually talking about in detail advanced care planning. Can you just touch a little bit about what that really means, and then sort of what are the documentations that's needed?
So there's tons of information out on the internet about what advanced care planning means, and they say to think about what you want.
Right.
And I think that that's a great idea, but I think that we actually need to step back and do something a little bit more formal. What does CPR look like? What does being in an intensive care unit look like? What does being in long-term care with advanced dementia looking like, rather than it being sort of this nefarious thing?
Yeah.
Like, what does it mean to have CPR? So in order to do that, we need to have a little bit more education, and that's what I do with people. I do one-on-one so that we talk through the various scenarios.
Okay.
What would you want done if you had something catastrophic happen to you tomorrow, such as being in a car accident, having a massive heart attack, having a massive stroke. So not 20 or 30 years from now. What about tomorrow? Then if you have a serious illness such as cancer, when would you want treatment stopped? Would you not want to be fed anymore? When would you want it to go to comfort and supportive care only? And then the big one for 90% of us is, what would we want if we had advanced dementia, where we no longer know the people who are around us and those kinds of things. And a little bit of a diss to lawyers is that they'll say at that point, don't give me heroics. But at that point, heroics are no longer even on the table.
Right.
So it's a little bit more of a convoluted conversation. So we need to have those conversations first.
Right.
There are documents that are absolutely essential.
Okay.
A representation agreement is something that's not talked about enough that every single adult, I believe, over the age of 19 should have. It is for personal and health decisions. Under the age of 50, we are the most likely to be in an accident that is going to be severe and prolonged recovery. And we need to name somebody.
Yeah.
So my daughter had a traumatic brain injury at the age of 27 where she broke several bones in her face, and she had a brain injury. She needed anesthetic. She was on opioids. And so she really was not terribly capable of looking after herself during that period.
Right.
And we didn't have a representation agreement in place. So it's, if you're doing a will, if you're doing a power of attorney, add a representation agreement at the same time. The next one is for people who are getting older, maybe have health conditions where they would not do well with having CPR, which is cardiopulmonary resuscitation. It's a discussion that you need to have with your doctor, and it's either a no CPR form or a medical orders for scope of treatment form where you can designate that you don't want to have CPR. And then there are other things like an Advance Directive, which is a legally binding document. A lot of people will have heard of a living will. And a living will is not a legally binding document. And in fact, in our Healthcare Consent Act, it says it is illegal in British Columbia to have a living will. So there are not a lot of lawyers or powers of attorney who are doing them anymore, but what you will see is expressed wishes, which are often in the representation agreement.
Okay.
But those are not legally binding.
Okay, so it's only the Advance Directive that is legally binding.
That's right.
Okay.
And it should just apply to your health care. And I would hope that somebody comes to somebody professional like me to help put them, or my team, to help put that together, because otherwise we don't really know what we're talking about.
Okay.
Some people may think like, okay, my loved one is in a state that really need to be helped and to revive. And what's the consequence when people don't need a CPR, or maybe CPR is not the best solution for them?
Okay, so it's a conversation you need to have with your doctor. Anybody, I believe, over the age of 70 should be talking to their doctors about whether they're going to have CPR. There are underlying health conditions that can make it almost virtually unsuccessful. So if they've got underlying heart disease, they've got underlying kidney disease, they've got osteoporosis. Because when I was a cardiac nurse, I joked that there was not a chest that I didn't break when I did CPR. And so if you've got osteoporosis and your bones are, might break, then what does that look like? But if you have said, I would want quality of life versus quantity, you need to really look at that, because the majority of people, like 98% of people who have CPR, will not have quality of life after they've had CPR. 2% of people will actually leave the hospital.
Okay.
And they might even have brain damage. So the older we get, we should have a serious conversation. It's not something like, let's give it a try.
Yeah, I think most younger listeners doesn't really have that kind of concept. That's why I want to bring it up. Like
Absolutely.
the CPR may not be the only solution for our loved one.
No, for sure, yeah.
I think that people are really worried that if they choose not to have CPR, they're not going to get everything else. And so if I can just have a little bit of a segue to medical orders for scope of treatment.
Right.
Medical orders for scope of treatment were brought up. When I was a nurse, a doctor would walk in and go and see a patient who wasn't doing well, come out and write DNR across the order sheet sign their name, and leave. We didn't know if that meant that we should stop all treatment now, or do we keep on going with treatment until their heart stops? And this is a universal problem. And a lot of people want CPR just because they want everything else. They might not want that. And so there are 6 levels in medical scope of treatment, and the top 3 are critical care. So you can say, I don't want CPR. I would not want to be intubated and be put on a ventilator, so tube down your throat to help you breathe. But I would want to go to critical care. And there are a lot of reasons to go to critical care. We might have a heart attack and we just need to have a stent to open up the vessel put in. That involves critical care. We might have had a stroke where we need to have a blood thinner given to reverse the stroke. That takes critical care. We might fall and break our hip and we're delirious afterwards, and we need to be in a unit where there are more nurses and more eyes on us. That is technically critical care. So I actually think that as people get older, they are going to need more critical care than when they're younger.
Absolutely, yes.
Sure.
And so people who are in the medical levels, these people have got chronic disease, maybe are in long-term care, those kinds of things, are actively dying. So I want people to think about critical care might be a good idea.
Absolutely, and I really like the way that you sort of laid it out, where you don't necessarily have to have CPR or be on a ventilator, but you can still get the quality of care, prolong your life still a little bit by just putting a stent in, for example, right? But that falls under critical care, and it's so important for people to understand that.
Yeah.
And maybe, like you said, have a conversation with their doctors. What's my life going to look like if I do get CPR?
Right.
And a lot of people don't know. Right. They think, okay, boom, you're better. You can walk home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's not the case necessarily, as you said.
One of the things that we're going to talk about is HealthLinkBC, and as an incredible resource. And you can actually go and do a Google search. What does life after CPR look like?
Oh.
Or what does CPR look like?
Right.
So that people have more of an idea.
Yeah.
You won't find a lot of nurses who want CPR done. We know that it's an incredible indignity to our bodies, that we're stripped naked. We've got 12 people working on us at the same time. It's not a very dignified process at all. And so there's lots of information about there so that people can get a better idea. There are a lot of great websites. And right now, I really want to steer people away from using US-based websites.
Okay, yeah.
They're a lot of them are actively saying there'll be a banner up at the top saying that our data is no longer up to date because of the cutbacks and those kinds of things.
Okay.
So stay to your Canadian websites. The one I use at least 3 or 4 times a week is HealthLinkBC.
Okay.
Every drug that we have in a British Columbia formulary pharmacy is listed on there. And with all the pros and the cons and the side effects and all of those kinds of things. When you phone 811 and you're talking to a nurse, they're using their website as all of their information. There must be thousands and thousands and thousands of pages on HealthLinkBC. So I really encourage people to go and explore.
That's amazing. I didn't even know that about the medications.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Exactly.
have to check that out.
BC Cancer has the formulary for every kind of systemic treatment, radiation, those kinds of things. And it's just an absolute labyrinth, an incredible website for anybody who's got cancer for all sorts of supports.
So then it's almost like behooves the family to do a little bit more research on the condition. That way, when they go to the specialist or go to the family doctor, then they can have those kind of like more educated questions to help sort of understand how to support their family member.
And
through
some
the
doctors
diagnosis.
don't like it.
Okay.
They'll say, you should. I don't go to Dr. Google. But I think that when you go to a Canadian or a British Columbia site and you understand your conditions, I do it all the time when I'm doing research and I'm going
Right.
into an appointment with somebody. So I sound educated.
Yeah.
Here's a little tip: is learn to say the words. So
Okay.
don't say my prostrate is acting up.
Okay.
You want to say my prostate is acting
Yes.
up.
Yes.
My creatine level is too high. No, that's a form of protein. You want creatinine. So, and some of the drugs are unpronounceable, but do your
agreed.
best.
Yeah.
Yes.
The more intelligent you sound, the better the information you're going to get. And the other thing is to actually say to your doctors, I'm not comfortable with getting all this information. You just, you do what you need to do, doc. Or, I'm a person who really wants all the information.
Right.
And I really want the truth no matter what. I need to be able to look into my own crystal ball and see where I'm going with this.
Right, exactly. And I think you mentioned at the last episode too that you can ask if they're recording it.
Yes.
To get a copy of it so that you have the transcript there.
Yes, yeah. So most of them are taking have AI transcribers now, which I find are incredibly accurate. But just make sure that you're going through and it's put things in context.
Right.
So I think that for the documents you mentioned, so how frequent should we update them?
And this is the hard part because the last thing that we think about doing when we're sick or somebody else in our life is sick or has died is our documentation. That's grief is an emotional thing, and doing these documents is a logical thing. But it's really important that if we have a major health issue, so we've gone to the hospital or we've been told that we have early kidney failure or we've been told that we've had a heart attack, that we update our documents and decide. And things like cancer, we're all in at the beginning, and then we might be changing our mind as we move forward.
Right.
We're told that there aren't any treatments that work anymore. Put your affairs in order. It's time to look at these documents. So generally, we say when you had any major health change, especially that health history, update it.
Yes.
Who is that person who you named as your representative still the best person?
Right.
Did they die? So I had one gentleman who he had not thought of any of this. His wife had died 5 years before. He fell off of a ladder and had a terrible brain injury.
Right.
And he was no longer able to make his decisions. He had named his wife as his representative, his power of attorney, and his executor. And she hadn't been there for 5 years. The alternate had never signed the forms. And then when we needed to put him in placement, his alternate was actually out of the country, needed to track him down. His sister lived in Australia. So it turned into a really big mess.
Right.
So it's really important that we put that at the top of our to-do list.
Yeah.
When we're going through and looking after all the stuff is put the piece of paper at the very top and a big yellow sticky, do this.
Yes.
Those kinds of things. Divorce, when you have a falling out with your representative, with your power of attorney. And that happens more often than we think.
1 in 2 get divorced. Isn't that the statistic? Yeah.
But you've next named your closest friend and you had a fight or then you found out that she's terrible with money or any of those things. Redo it. So any major life event, make sure that you're getting your documents done.
Okay.
Let's say if I'm the sole caretakers for the family and I have a serious emergency. So if that's the case, how can, as a caretaker myself or care partnership, have a special consideration if I'm under this kind of cares?
Oh, backup plans. They're so incredibly
Yeah.
important. So one of the documents that we put together is in case of emergency documents. So if you go to patientpathways.ca, you'll see one that says ICE form. And we've got it on there, but even if you don't use the form, you put special considerations in your emergency packet that you're going to put on your fridge. So if you've got a cat, who's going to look after your
Right.
cat?
Yeah.
You know, have you made arrangements with the SPCA for backup? Have you got a neighbor or a friend? But one of the big things is that caregivers often go down first. They're exhausted, they're overwhelmed. They're the same age as the person they're caring for, and they quite often will end up in hospital first. And now you've got a double emergency.
Yeah.
So backup plans, you know, with your adult children, if I ever go to hospital, this is what needs to happen with Dad.
Right.
Letting just the paramedics know that my husband has moderate Alzheimer's, and you know, bring him with us until we can find somewhere, because people often get ignored, you know, who've been left behind.
Exactly.
So you need to have backup plans.
Is there, like, this is just something I thought about. You know how people wear those bracelets to say, like, they're allergic to you know, penicillin or whatever? Are there such things that say, hey, my husband needs care or this and that, like, to alert? Or is that just all on the fridge and with all those documentation there?
Certainly, talking about bracelets is a really good idea. But yes, do put it in with your emergency forms.
Okay.
But I have found that we need to have backup plans. So I think I mentioned this last time, one of my clients, he fell in the middle of the night, broke his leg, and the hospital never followed up with me. They saw that they thought he was capable, and he probably assumed they would call me. And so it turned into a bit of a mess. But he was with Medical Alert, their fall alert system.
Okay.
And that's actually how the ambulance was called. And they had me down as the backup.
Good.
And so they phoned as well. Some people really, really don't want it's a vanity issue that I want people to get over.
Yeah, agreed.
You know, there are so many ways now that you can have a fairly discreet pendant that is underneath your shirt, or there's all sorts of Medical Alert bracelets that are quite beautiful. They cost more money, and people are concerned with $120 a year, or even more if you've got a Google Watch or you've got things like that. But how much is your independence and your future? You know, if somebody goes, what's wrong with you? Because you've got a bracelet on. Nobody would ever say that. So I encourage people to get over their vanity.
Yeah, I agree.
And also, like, if people have some privacy, they thought, okay, for some seniors, they thought, okay, if I have that installed in my house for like a monitoring systems, they'll feel, okay, someone is watching me all the time. Because how help those seniors to go over those kind of security. For example, like my mother-in-law is living isolated by herself, and we keep like thinking about, what happens if she has some incidents. So what's any suggestion or planning we can help to get her to overcome that?
There are so many technology things that can go on, and one of the things that's going to come out on my website is a company called Got Care, and they use technology that an active, cognitively intact adult can use. They can put their blood pressure in and all those kinds of things. But there are alerts that say, "Hi, are you out of bed?" "Yes." And then your family can check in and see. And if mom normally gets out of bed at 8, but today she's, she hasn't gotten up till 10, is there a concern here? There are all sorts of technological ways that it can be hooked up to your watch, which can have fall detection. There are so many ways, and it doesn't mean that our privacy is being, looked at all. Yeah. I've heard way too many stories of people who've been on the kitchen floor for 3 days.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And so is your privacy worth that pain and potential life-threatening situation because you've been on a floor for 3 days?
Yeah, exactly.
So the best time to plan was yesterday, and the second best time
Yes.
is today.
That's right.
So is there anything like for our audience, like one thing they can do for this week just to start the first step of the advanced
There
planning?
probably is no better week in the entire year for us to be doing this. You know, whether it's pulling your loved one aside for a casual conversation, you know, our families are together.
Yes.
I have seen people have these conversations over turkey dinner. It might be a bit much, but
Yeah.
you've got your entire family together.
Oh,
Exactly.
absolutely. Absolutely.
This is a great time to do that. And I'm not sure, you know, people are going to be listening to this in, you know, whatever the big event that's calling you together. But we've got Zoom now.
Yes.
And so, you know, it's really important, you know, whether your loved ones are in Toronto or in Hong Kong, Zoom, we can bring our families together and say, and we talked about it last time, but as a recap, how do you bring those things up? Make it you-centered.
Yes.
It's really important for me to understand what you want in case I may need to make those decisions. It's really important for me to understand what I want when I am faced with these decisions. And I know that this is going to be an uncomfortable conversation, or it could be, but let's think of it as courageous and a gift for your future and my future. Bring it up positively and as calmly as possible.
That's a very wonderful advice.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that
absolutely.
for my family too.
Yeah.
Also this time.
Just to add one little thing too, I totally agree that having the conversation is the beginning of, you know, of planning ahead. But as we get together for holidays or get-togethers, I think it's also important for the loved ones to just listen to what their loved one is saying. They could just say, "Oh, like I just almost tripped the other day, but I'm okay." But that could be a sign, right? That's what's going on. Or take a look around the home. Are things being left undone, right? Are projects not being completed, like in terms of maintenance and upkeep? Those are little signs, I think, that can clue us in that maybe things aren't going as the way they've always been.
And people bring that up all the time. 3 or 4 years later, they'll say, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense. When we were there, you know, the trash hadn't been, or, you know, the raccoons were out in the garden, or, you know, Mom's usually a really fastidious housekeeper and things weren't as clean as they should have been."
Yeah.
I was with a family yesterday where Mom's dementia and a really devastating dementia, they were seeing signs of it 2 years before.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that you have to bring it up and rush somebody to a doctor.
Exactly.
But let's just be aware
Yeah.
and maybe bring it up. So as I said previously, my dad would say to me, "I'm done. I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore." The more they are saying it, the more it means that it's important to them and not something, "Oh, she says that all the time." She's saying it all the time because she wants somebody to pay attention to it.
Exactly. Or be acknowledged, right?
Be acknowledged,
So,
yeah. But they might not want to say it in front of somebody else.
Right.
So, you know, what did you mean by that, Dad? Or, you know, is there something that you want us to know?
Yeah.
What can I do? And especially if you're the trusted, there's always the trusted daughter, the trusted son. Let them be the person who takes them aside and has those very important conversations.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, thank you, Connie, for the wise advice. I really, especially for this time of year, I think
Exactly.
everybody should really consider if we have a chance. Everybody is in a good mood, right? And so it's important to have those crucial conversations, especially when we are all together. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. So hopefully we will all be aging gracefully, not by hope, but by design.
Thank you.
A big shout out to our guest, Connie Jorsvik, founder of Patient Pathways, for once again sharing her expertise as a senior healthcare navigator and patient advocate. Here are your design insights: legal and documentation. Don't leave your healthcare to chance. In BC, a representation agreement and Advance Directive work together to ensure your voice is heard when you cannot speak for yourself. A key part of this is knowing the 6 levels of medical order for scope of treatment. Understanding these levels allow you to turn your values into actionable medical instructions. Check the link in the video description to download our breakdown of the 6 levels and start planning today. Educate yourself with the right resources. Don't wait for an emergency to learn the language of the hospital. Bookmark websites like HealthLinkBC and utilize their 811 hotline to start learning the medical terms that will help you communicate with doctors and nurses. When doing research, remember to use reputable Canadian websites for medical information, such as Health Canada, HealthLinkBC, Canadian Cancer Foundation, Alzheimer's Society, and many more like these. Leverage today's technology for your loved one's safety. Utilize the technology available today. There are devices out there that will allow 24-hour monitoring without invading their privacy. From wearable alerts to smart home monitors to keep our seniors independent and safe for longer. It's not about hovering. It's about designing a safety net. Be present. Listen to what your loved one is saying, even if it sounds like they're just joking. Observe their behavior and patterns to see if they're starting to struggle. Communicate and ask questions, but don't make judgments. Always remember, all we want is for them to stay healthy and safe. Finally, a word to the caretakers out there. Please remember that your well-being is the safety net for your loved ones. Setting up your own in case of emergency planning is also very important for both of you. Make sure your instructions include contingency care for those in your charge, so they can stay supported even when you're facing an emergency of your own. If you have any questions or topic suggestions, reach out in the comments or email us at gracefulagingbydesign@gmail.com. If you found this episode useful, please like and subscribe. It'll help us grow and reach more families who need these resources. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.